The Joker, portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, remains one of the most compelling interpretations of the character. While Heath Ledger delivered a fully realized villain, Phoenix's version brilliantly illustrates how an average man gradually evolves into a legendary antagonist. There's no doubt that in terms of emotional depth, intensity, and realism, this depiction of the Joker reached entirely new heights. The film explores profound and significant topics, encouraging the audience to reconsider and view Joker's journey from a new angle. Ledger's Joker feels right at home in a comic book universe, but Phoenix's feels like something completely separate. In fact, if you removed every reference to the Joker or the Wayne family, the movie could easily function as a standalone psychological drama detached from the superhero genre. Joker is seen as an anti-hero, but that leads us to ask, who is the true villain in this narrative and what is its core message? From the opening moments of the film, one unexpected element stood out to me. Garbage. Yes, you heard me right, garbage. This motif runs throughout the entire story, appearing so frequently that it begins to feel like an invisible presence in the background. Trash is everywhere, piling up on the sidewalks, mentioned on news broadcasts, and even discussed at the film's start. Even Joker himself brings it up right before he pulls the trigger, and that's no accident. The more I reflected on it, the more it became clear how essential this detail is to understanding the character. The director didn't spotlight the trash for no reason. It carries symbolic meaning. But before we dive into what that meaning might be, we need to rewind a bit. To Heath Ledger's Joker. In 2008, The Dark Knight premiered, and although Batman was the central figure, Heath Ledger's Joker completely stole the spotlight. By the time the film ended, it wasn't entirely clear whether Batman or his chaotic counterpart was the true protagonist. Ledger's performance was so intense and captivating that he dominated the screen, even with a well-established actor like Christian Bale portraying Batman. And following Ledger's untimely death, public fascination with his version of the Joker only grew. He was posthumously awarded an Oscar for the role. Sadly, his portrayal became iconic after his passing, leaving a profound impact on cinema. The concept of a Joker origin story had been circulating since around 2014 or 2015. Around that period, Joaquin Phoenix expressed interest in portraying a comic book villain, but only in a smaller, indie-style production. He was even offered the role of Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe but declined, not wanting to commit to a long-term franchise. Later, he also turned down the opportunity to play the Joker, believing the character had already been explored to its full potential. But director Todd Phillips envisioned something entirely different. He saw Joker as the foundation for a distinctive, grounded narrative. In August 2017, DC officially brought him on board as director, producer, and co-writer. Meanwhile, Jared Leto, who had portrayed the Joker in Suicide Squad, wasn't exactly pleased. He even attempted to leverage his influence in the music world to convince Warner Bros. To cancel the entire project. At one point, the studio pushed Todd Phillips to consider Leonardo DiCaprio for the lead role, hoping it might bring Martin Scorsese on board as well. But Phillips had only one actor in mind, Joaquin Phoenix. The screenplay was crafted specifically with Phoenix in mind. After much reluctance, he eventually agreed to take on the role, realizing that this film was far from a typical Hollywood production. And that's how the journey toward creating the now iconic Joker, as portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, officially began. Following Heath Ledger's legendary take on the Joker, director Todd Phillips had a serious challenge ahead of him. How do you portray the descent of an average man into a symbol of chaos? What could push someone to paint a smile on their face and step willingly into a world of violence? Was it always in him, or did the world push him to the edge? These questions formed the core of the film, an intense dive into the slow and painful unraveling of Arthur Fleck before he fully transforms into the Joker. Arthur is a man suffering from profound psychological instability. As a child, he was abused by his adoptive mother and her partner. On top of that, we learn he endured significant brain trauma, and his uncontrollable laughter is one of its lasting consequences. And to make things more complicated, Arthur is what we'd call an unreliable narrator. A number of scenes in the movie might be hallucinations, imagined moments, or distorted recollections. But in the end, it doesn't really matter if these things happened in reality or only existed in Arthur's mind. What truly matters is the emotional weight of the tragedy he's going through. I personally believe that some of these moments are clearly fabricated, like when his coworker casually hands him a gun without reason, or how he suddenly appears on the talk show set straight from his apartment, or the strangely deserted subway trains, and of course the relationship with his neighbor. We're explicitly shown that none of that actually happened. But ultimately, it's not about whether Arthur really committed all those acts. What matters is that to him, they feel real. This blurring of reality highlights just how deep his psychological issues go, making it harder to distinguish between what's imagined and what's actually happening. From the very beginning of this video, I pointed out that garbage plays a surprisingly crucial role in the film. It's everywhere, and that's no accident. Just before pulling the trigger on live television, Arthur asks the central question: what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like garbage? And if you remember, the film opens with a citywide trash crisis caused by a sanitation workers' strike. These are literally the first lines of the movie. As a result, trash piles up on every corner, and with it come the rats, spreading, multiplying. The city decays. The authorities turn a blind eye. Public frustration grows. That growing tension eventually explodes into violence. Arthur gets attacked by teenagers, crime rises, and the city's economy continues to collapse. Even Arthur's job reflects the wider collapse of Gotham. He stands on the street holding a sign that reads, "Everything must go," a phrase usually used when a business is shutting down. The symbolism becomes even clearer when his boss demands he return the sign. Because even something as minor as that holds importance during an economic collapse. His apartment building is in awful condition. Due to government funding cuts, Arthur no longer has access to free therapy. A man battling severe psychological problems is left completely on his own. He can't pay for his medications, and nobody cares. Even his therapist tells him bluntly, "They don't care about people like you, and they don't care about me either." Arthur gets assaulted right next to those same piles of rotting trash, underlining just how disposable he is in the eyes of society. The filthy streets and constant threats surrounding him reflect the city's cold indifference and brutality. And what do those in power do? They distract the public with comedy shows and cheap entertainment, all while real issues are ignored. Talk show hosts sit comfortably in their studios while regular people are losing jobs, living in fear, and drowning, quite literally, in garbage. They just laugh it off. So everybody's heard about the super rats in Gotham, right? Well, today the mayor said he's got a plan. You ready for this? Super Cat. But Murray is only a small piece of a much larger machine. Behind him are much more powerful figures calling the shots. Arthur Fleck may be the film's anti-hero, but who's the real villain? At first glance, it's not obvious. But if you look closely, the answer becomes clear. It's Thomas Wayne, a billionaire with the wealth and influence to actually make a difference, to fix what's broken. Instead, he locks himself away behind the gates of his estate, only stepping into the spotlight to run for mayor. He makes no real effort to understand the struggles of everyday people. The three men Arthur kills on the subway, they work for Wayne Enterprises. And after their deaths, Thomas Wayne goes on TV and declares that the poor are rallying behind a murderer, making the social divide even more obvious. Gotham becomes a city torn in two, the privileged and the forgotten. The film strongly hints that Wayne's employees use their position to act without consequence, something normal citizens could never get away with. But even then, Thomas refers to them as family and calls their killer a coward. And the rest of the city? The people who don't mourn their deaths? To Thomas, they're nothing but clowns, useless, garbage. His words only reinforce the massive gulf between the elite and the struggling population. So, what is this movie really saying? It's about how people like Arthur Fleck don't just snap on their own. They're shaped, or rather, shattered, by the system around them. Yes, you could argue that Arthur is responsible for his actions. But what if you were in his place? What if you had grown up in the same harsh environment? What if the world had treated you with the same cold cruelty? What if society cast you aside, discarded you like something worthless? Who would you become? The film forces us to confront tough questions about social responsibility. Those in positions of power, The ones who control wealth, policy, and opportunity play a direct role in shaping the reality that ordinary people face. And when they fail to offer help, care, or even a chance to those who are struggling the most, when they turn their backs on people like Arthur, then who's really to blame for what follows? Joker delivers one message loud and clear. When society continuously overlooks, neglects, and crushes its most fragile members, it doesn't just abandon them. It creates monsters. It manufactures chaos. The system of inequality and apathy made the Joker. There's one moment in the film that captures this theme with haunting clarity. Arthur, shattered and unwanted, lies motionless on his bed. He's the embodiment of everyone society has thrown away. And beside him, on the floor, is a crumpled newspaper bearing a chilling headline, "Kill the Rich," a sign of rising anger, of a movement building. And just within arm's reach is a gun. All it takes is one final push. That single shot says everything. When people are driven to despair, when they feel invisible, hopeless, and unheard, they may resort to desperate, terrifying acts. Arthur Fleck is just one of many, but he becomes the face of what happens when society refuses to care. The film leaves no doubt. This transformation isn't solely the fault of one man. It's the outcome of a broken system that turns its back on the people it's supposed to protect. So it's no surprise that those who helped shape this cruel world eventually suffer the consequences of what they've ignored. As Arthur himself said, and it came back to haunt both Murray Franklin and Thomas Wayne, "You get what you fucking deserve." The Joker's final punchline is never spoken aloud, and yet its meaning echoes loud and clear. In one of the final shots, we see a young Bruce Wayne standing beside his parents' lifeless bodies, surrounded by trash bags. That image holds the ultimate irony. The very system that gave rise to Thomas Wayne also created the Joker, and the chaos Joker ignited is what gave birth to Batman. In the end, Joker and Batman are two halves of the same whole, yin and yang. They are reflections of each other, chaos and control, madness and morality. Each one born as a direct response to the other, locked in a cycle that can never be broken, because one cannot exist without the other.